It's late in the evening on November 7th, and we've got some election results. As of 8 p.m. on Tuesday night, 3,500 some ballots have been counted, with another 3,000 left to count. Now that 3,000 number represents ballots that they have in hand. There's definitely going to be more coming in the coming days through the mail. Let's start with the race for mayor. Currently, Frances Benjamin is leading Deb McNeil 53.3% to 46%. As it stands, this is a difference of 134 votes, or a margin of 7.3%. It's too early to call this race decisively one way or another, but leads like this tend to stick in an election of this size. Next up, we have the at-large position between Eric Fajarin and Holly Greystone. They are currently neck and neck, 843 to 801. In Ward 3, we've got Pat Wright leading CJ Robert 63 to 36. This is a pretty decisive margin, and I think we can safely call this race for Pat Wright. Ann, Nathan, and Carla will all win their races since they ran unopposed. Interestingly enough, Ann lost 20% of her vote to Dan Marr, who dropped out of the race. And it looks like the same 4 people in Ward 2 voted for the write-in candidates. I'd love to meet those 4 people and see what their thoughts were. In the school district race, it looks like Craig Nelson is easily defeating James Everman by nearly a 70 to 30% margin. The rest of the Pullman School District seats were unopposed. So where do we go from here? Well, this first count just represents the ballots that were collected early and on the day of the election. If you mailed in your ballot on Tuesday, or you put it in a drop box later in the day, the county is currently saying that they have 3,000 votes in hand ready to be counted again tomorrow, but that number will likely go up. So here's what you can expect. On Wednesday, there will be a second ballot dump. The first round brought 3,500 ballots. The second one will be somewhat less than that. And then on Thursday, there'll be another batch, even smaller, and so on and so forth as the final mail-in ballots trickle in from around the country and around the world. With each round of ballot counts, the chances of us seeing major changes in the standings diminishes significantly. As I said in a previous video, if the margin is more than 5%, it typically stands through the whole process. It would take a crazy statistical fluke to see a lead change late in the process. But with the smaller races and with a margin of less than 5%, anything can happen. In my opinion, the margin of victory for Pat Wright versus CJ Robert is pretty much a sure thing. There aren't enough votes out there to overcome this kind of a margin. In the mayor's race, it's quite a bit closer, but statistically, it's still outside the range of where we'd expect to see a lead change. It's possible that we could see Frances's lead narrow down to 4 or 5%. It's also entirely possible that we could see his lead jump out to 8 or 9 or even 10%. Again, it's not impossible that Deb overtakes Frances. It's just not very likely. The one we need to keep an eye on is the at-large position. We could easily see a lead change in this race in the next day or two, maybe even more than one lead change. So what about a recount possibility? Well, according to the RCW, or the official law of Washington, for local elections such as this one, the margin between the first and second candidates has to be less than 150 votes and less than 1/4 of 1% of the total number of votes cast. This is actually a very narrow margin. If this criteria was applied to this race right now, the difference in votes would be 42, well within that 150 vote margin. But 1/4 of the total votes cast comes out to 4 votes, which means if this ended today, Eric would be the winner and there would be no recount. But we have a long ways to go with half to 2/3 of the votes still to be counted, and anything is possible. I'll have more updates tomorrow. Thanks for watching.